Given that we are going to be reviewing the curricula, and now obviously the assessment's part of that, you know, how do we assess the curriculum? Yes. From what I can gather, and other places have done this, they've had quite a lot of educational expertise in this process to write these or set them up. Does that exist currently within the college? And if it does, that's terrific. If it doesn't, how's that going to be accessed? And we're all going to be madly writing these EPAs, you know, at least 8 each. That's a lot of work for people in their spare time, and we'd probably do it badly at the beginning. I would suspect we'll probably get better as we go on, but the first couple will be rubbish. Who's going to sort of sit and pick them apart and say, no, this, you know, how's the process going to work? If I'm going to sell this, I need to know the process.
I think that's cue to you.
I think perhaps the example of community child health might help. I mean, that group's already written in the process of writing, developing EPAs. It was done in collaboration with colleagues and supported by college staff. There are templates and guidelines on how you structure them, but the content really does come from you. I mean, the idea is an educational idea, but you know, what are the important tasks in your field, and thinking through when you unpack this task. Yes, there's an element of communication, there's an element of medical expertise, there's an element of you know, decision making, and you map it out. I think you can have a good go at that, and that's, you know. Then I think it's important always in the college with any new idea is to pilot things and test them before you launch. And I think that'll be part of the process too. So I can imagine that we will develop a toolkit, if you like, a guide for how to write EPAs, and it may start at the beginning with, you know, gathering views from your colleagues, not just in committees, but across your specialty, about what do you think are the important tasks of a nephrologist that we think every trainee needs to master to a level where they don't need to be directly supervised before they're awarded their FRACP or their fellowship. So you get some ideas, you might get some discussion, and then you go through a filtering. Well, how do we choose a small set of those, have a go at writing them? It's iterative. It's an iterative process. And then I think testing them and piloting. I mean, in a way, that's, Terence, that's what we're doing in community child health?
Exactly how it went.
And how easy, difficult did you find it?
It's hard work.
It's hard work?
The SAC members took on the chairing roles and then asked others to become involved in the working groups. So we had a very diverse range, which was interesting in its own right, because I think you know, people on the SAC know of all of the problems that we're dealing with advanced training all the time. People who don't necessarily or haven't been on an SAC don't necessarily know that, and that was interesting and useful. We certainly got a good kind of reflective contribution from people who we thought would contribute well to the discussion. But it took months to do it.
And to what extent could we, I mean, Elise, I don't know if you've thought about this, but if we go down this route, sounds like we might, presumably not everyone has to do it all at once, all at the same time. Presumably some groups can start and find some pitfalls that others can learn from, and then they, I'm guessing?
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, we would have to stagger, in terms of the college support, we will have to stagger that over time. So we're talking about a multi-year project here. We'll just clarify that up front. It is a multi-year project. And I can see, a bit like the way we develop policy now, we have sort of steps that you go through over time. And that would include, you know, consultation and testing out and training, thinking about how would you train the supervisors to understand your colleagues and how to use them, making sure the trainees are involved in that process. So I think that's what we have to give our thought to, designing a process for development and implementation. And we will learn from the Community Child Health group, and that will be very instructive in how best to go about this. Because it will succeed or fail, I believe, on how well it's designed, like everything at the college. The concepts people can agree with, but the design of the tools and the instruments and how it happens, It's all in that, and we want to get the leanest, most efficient design.
But the assessment has to or either drive or inform or coexist with the curriculum review, doesn't it? I mean, they're so intimately linked.
Makes sense, wouldn't it?
That we need to make sure that we're doing them absolutely together, so that we, okay.
And I think one of the other challenges, one of the other challenges is getting the right chunk, I suspect, because you could say an EPA is to be a physician. It is an EPA, but it's not a useful EPA. And at the other end, you could say an EPA is to put an IV line. That's not useful either. So you need to get the right chunk. Yes.
Well, just as a trainee, I think it's important at the beginning to really remember or focus on or make it a priority if you're going to absolutely make sure you focus on that curriculum as a whole. So if we're going to deal with an assessment, we have to have something that we can teach and then assess. So we have to have the teaching strategies and the teaching resources to teach these EPAs and then assess them. So it has to come, you can't just assess them, you have to actually teach them at the same time. And that's where it, I guess, links in with the curriculum review. So we have to be developing the activities and the resources and the strategies to be teaching them as well.
Hopefully most of it will be on the job though. Now, where we met you, I think, was next.
I was just going to make a point that's already been made, which is that while the curriculum is being created or developed, it would be a very rational process while you're developing the curriculum to identify some of the things that could be developed into EPAs, and also while you're doing that to determine what would be the level of competencies you'd expect at various stages of training within that. So say if you're developing someone's management of X, Y, and Z, what level would you expect a junior trainee compared to a trainee who's about to complete their training doing? And so it makes rational sense that in the process of creating the curriculum, you identify potential EPAs. Now, they might not all get developed into EPAs, but it would be the logical way of doing it rather than coming back and having to redo that later.
I would agree with that. I would have thought that as the curricula get revised, at least starting with the question, what are the key parts of the job you need to be a geriatrician, a nephrologist, neurologist, whatever it's going to be. Let's just think about that for a start. Okay, which ones of these cluster under that? And to my mind, that's how I do it, I think. There was someone around here, I think, had their arm up on stage. Maybe. Yes.
I think that, I take the point, Marie-Louise, but I just think that, with all fairness, it is difficult to do this kind of work that takes literally years to progress and to keep on with, like unsupported. And I think there's also the potential that some of these EPAs might be shared across the college, that certainly in the clinical groups it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't perhaps be one or two of them that might be common. And the last thing you want is people to go to a lot of trouble and where they're heading in common areas and where work could have been saved, I guess is where I'm going. So I think that it's fine, but I think also people need help. People need resourcing to do this level of job.
Just a comment on that. I said right at the outset of the day we formed a curriculum advisory group. One of the members of that group is standing up at the lectern, and it's that sort of group to, it's a biggish group too, to try and give support and that cross-curriculum discussion. So, the renal physicians have come up with this EPA that actually might fit as a professional qualities EPA across multiple. We need a group to do that, and that group is formed, and it will have its first meeting very shortly, and it has good expertise on it to support
so one
the process.
One aspect that just occurred to me just in this discussion is it could be, phase one is a quick overview, rough and ready. Just tell us the 12 or 15 key roles that you need to be able to do independently to be an exologist. Just roughly. We'll have a look at them all, and we'll say, yep, those 5 actually are common to these other 10 disciplines, so they'll go together, and this one seems completely on its own, this one looks a bit small, this one looks a bit big, whatever, and then perhaps going back and then fleshing them out after that. I'm just making that up, but yeah, okay.
In terms of how it gets implemented, would the expectation be that a trainee at the end of their advanced training would be signed off on all of the EPAs for that specialty, and if they weren't signed off on all of them, then they wouldn't be eligible for FRACP?
I presume that's the default position, but I did hear, was the child health one where there was sort of, you know, also had to do 5 out of the following 10, or I can see something like that working. You know, yes, you have to do these 8 and 5 out of the following 10 could be another option, I guess.
If we're being asked to say, well, you know, what skills do you have to be a gastroenterologist?
Yes.
I would have thought they would all be barriers, so it's another 10 barriers. You have to be signed off at the top level on every EPA.
Or at the set level.
Yeah.
The top level is you teach to someone else.
Okay. But so at a perform unsupervised level.
And that's our integrated summative assessment that the AMC have asked us to look at. In the absence of an exit exam, how can we be assured that all gastroenterology trainees are actually being signed off on similar things? And this is one way you could achieve that.
Yeah, would be quite a good way. Yep.
One of the questions I had in my mind is that performance can fluctuate.
Yes.
So if there's a sign-off,
yes, what does it mean?
Is that the end of it, or do you repeat the EPA at some point?
Yeah, it is a good question. I mean, it feels similar to the debate we have at the medical student level. You know, what do people mean when they sign off? You can put an IV line, because does that mean you can put one in tomorrow? Maybe yes, maybe no. And I think that would just need a bit of thought. I mean, this table over here asked me the same thing. What does practicing independently mean? Don't know the other one.
It's assuming that it's a stable construct, which it's probably not, and because you might be very comfortable in one setting and then you move to a completely different area, well, you're not going to be up to speed in that new area, and perhaps you want to have that reassessed at the new place to say, well, the previous, yes, you were signed off with this EPA, are we still happy with that? Actually, no, we've got, you know, they're not necessarily a stable.
Well, that's what we're doing now.
We are. Well,
that's what we're doing now, in a way. At the end of the year, we're signing off, but with much less documented. I mean, I'm not saying much less evidence, because I think the evidence is there, but it's less documented evidence that we're signing off now.
I think probably what I'd want to be able to be confident that the person I'm signing off on would also get back to me if they recognised that they had drifted off. You know, so a bit of insight. So yes, I could do it now, but actually, in a year's time, I'd have to do it again. I might actually need to go back and get some help.
Well, David and I are saying that we would have failed the IV line EPA on the plane today, because none of us had put one in for 20 years.
At least you knew, and you would probably call for help.
One, as well as whether it's a stable construct, is whether it's a single construct. So if you took an EPA like prescribing chemotherapy and you say, okay, I'll sign off, this person can prescribe chemotherapy, but can they prescribe it in the presence of organ dysfunction? Can they prescribe it while their page is going off 5 times compared to when they're left alone? You know, so each task could be deconstructed into multiple subtasks, etc. And I sort of find it hard to know what level of granularity you would be able to say that this person is capable of doing this task.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually. And, you know, what degree of complexity? So yes, you can manage simple heart failure, but can you manage really complicated heart failure? And yeah, I don't know, but I guess they're judgment calls, aren't they? I don't know the answer to that.
One question I have is, one thing that strikes me is that competency is a career-long thing, not just finishes when you get your RACP. So we're going to use some of these EPAs. Is there some way this can be integrated long-term for all of us to be doing on our CPD as supervisors?
Yeah, the big brave world. That'd be exciting, wouldn't it? Yeah. Mike.
There's a challenge and a request, and it's very to do with infrastructure resourcing.
Sorry, say that again.
Infrastructure resourcing, because we're going to have increasing bits of information based on observations being collected up by a group of people who are going to make decisions, and if they're going to make good decisions in a timely manner and give feedback and all the rest of it, then it's got to be the organisation that goes around that. It's got to be, and if we try and do it before that's all in place, you can have lots and lots of keen people who try and get it started, and it's going to fizzle out, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, that worries me too.
Sorry to be a bit of a...
How do we get the observations to the decision makers in an easy fashion? Easy fashion. We don't need to solve that right now, but I think recognising that we need to solve it is really important. Yeah, I think well worth emphasising. We're going to finish. Might just have one more comment or question. I think there's someone over here. Yeah.
When we developed the competency set for public health medicine, it was actually seen as the CPD competency set as well. Just that CPD hasn't actually developed in that direction. But in theory, you're right that the advanced training, what you can do at the end of your advanced training is basically the knowledge, skill and the competencies that you enter specialist practice. So you're right.
But it could help the retraining thing too. If I wanted to give up geriatrics and be a nephrologist, I might find some EPAs in common, might not.
I was just going to comment on, I guess, the workload for the committees. I think we've got about 450 trainees now, and how many bits of paper per trainee are going to be generated per... You did actually, sorry. Yeah.
But no, I think it's a point well made, yeah. I mean, the best idea I've heard is sort of Matt's idea around like a clinical record. Not quite sure what that would look like, but it feels like it might be part of the solution.